to the Podcast Discovery Show, the podcast that's about other podcasts, where each week we discuss a podcast that we recommended last week in a book club style discussion. I'm Kirk.
And I am Zach.
And this week we are going to be talking about the Dave Chang Show. I've been a fan of Dave Chang for a while. I think me and Zach both have. I think
Absolutely.
I'm trying to think of the first thing I saw him in. I think it was Ugly Delicious the first time I saw him. I'd seen him in other things like, guest stars on shows.
Yeah, he
and
did
stuff.
a lot of interviews and things like that before he started his own show. But now he has a media empire he's building.
For real. I mean, literally, it's Momofuku. What is it? Momofuku Media. That thing.
That.
Easy to say for me. But if you don't know who Dave Chang is, Dave Chang, he's a restaurateur. That's the way that they restaurateur.
Sure. Yeah, they definitely say it like that.
And
Somebody does.
I do. And he's an author, and he's a TV star. And he's the one that started Momofuku Restaurant Group, which has a bunch of really famous restaurants. He's won Michelin stars. He's traveled the world, doing what I like about his style is it's very like non-traditional. He doesn't like the rules. He likes to break them.
Yeah, and honestly, he comes off as very genuine, not pretentious at all. He really just likes food.
Yeah, and I think that he hates that about the culinary industry. He doesn't like that part of it. And there is that there.
It almost comes down to gatekeeping in a way.
Yeah.
Where it's you set some bar that it has to hit, and if it doesn't, then that doesn't count. But he will explore and eat traditional foods, even if prepared by amateur chefs and things like that, and he enjoys it. And he just likes exploring this entire world.
So he has been on multiple shows on TV. He was a judge on MasterChef Australia. He was on the PBS show, which I did watch, Mind of a Chef.
Oh, yeah.
He was
you know
on
what?
that.
Mind of a Chef might be the first place I saw him.
I didn't see that till later, but I've watched it. But yeah, I think that is older. And then, like we mentioned, Ugly Delicious, which is his Netflix special that he did, and it actually season 2 just released recently.
It's also
we
really
just started
good.
watching it. And also he did a short series on Netflix that was really fun to watch called Breakfast, Lunch, and Dinner. And you and me watched all of those episodes together, like at lunchtime. And he would basically...
If you want to check one out, there's one with him and Seth Rogen in Canada, and it's everything you want it to be.
So basically he has breakfast, lunch, and dinner with a different celebrity, and you get to really know them. You get to see them in there. And he does it in a place that they love or are from. And so they kind of take him on a tour of their favorite restaurants, their favorite tourist attractions in the area. And it's kind of like a travel and food show and celebrity show all in one. It's a really good show.
It is a great show. And the specific episode we're talking about is, I believe it's called... So the episode we're talking about is David Epstein, the paradox of non-expertise. And so David Epstein is a journalist. He worked for a long time. He was a senior writer at Sports Illustrated, where he specialized in science issues in sports and investigative reporting. He wrote 2 books, The Sports Gene, Inside the Science of Extraordinary Athletic Performance in 2013. That was a New York Times bestseller. And the book that he is on this show discussing is Range, Why Generalists Triumph in a Specialized World. And it, to me at least, this is the best possible advertisement for this book. I want to read this book.
Yeah, I actually already looked to see if my library had it. They don't have it yet. I think it's fairly new. So I'm going to have to buy it on Kindle because I do want to read it. Like, it's not... I usually don't like to read these kind of books. I'm not going to lie. This isn't my kind of... I love, like...
I rarely do.
Fantasy books and, sci-fi books. That's my jam. But kind of these kind of books are usually not what I like to read. But this one is right up my alley. It spoke to me just for everything that this book is about. So Zach, why don't you tell us what this book is actually about?
Yeah, so I'll read you the first paragraph of this blurb that he put out. And I'll just read it first. Plenty of experts argue that anyone who wants to develop a skill, play an instrument, or lead in their field should start early, focus intensely, and rack up as many hours of deliberate practice as possible. If you dabble or delay, you'll never catch up to the people who got a head start. But a closer look at research on the world's top performers, from professional athletes to Nobel laureates, show that early specialization is the exception, not the rule. And so, first thing that I noticed, you recommended this episode, is Dave Chang.
All of his stuff, all about food.
I thought it was going to be food. I thought it was going to be food 100%. I mean, you find out very quickly that it's not. It's because Dave talks about how this book was important to him about strategy and about life and about how he was going to approach things, not, oh, I learned to cook a new thing in this. Because it's even called range. I thought it was...
Yeah, like a cooking range.
Yeah, I thought it was like, you don't want to be specialized as a cook or as a chef. You want to be diverse and understanding.
I was even more simple.
You're talking very, very literal, like a range. Okay, yeah. No, but immediately they get into this episode, and you can tell that, one, this book is important to Dave Chang
for real
in general. He had a lot of very and pointed, not as in like antagonistic, but direct questions because he had read the book. And he mentioned very early on that he had written notes all throughout this book. So the interview that they have, and it's very conversational. Don't get the wrong idea. Dave he's a really conversational interviewer, and it's really fun to hear him talk to people because he puts people at ease. But he had very direct and specific questions for him about how he interpreted things that he wrote and how he would put that into essentially, instead of it being about cooking, Dave was bringing it there. So this book is not about cooking. Actually, the blurbs that they have on Amazon, there's stuff about like parenting, business, education, sports, and it's more about it almost, self-help book has a connotation, I feel like, at this point, where it's
I didn't want to say that,
yeah,
but it kind of, if you go to a library or you go to a bookstore, this would probably be in there.
But this is the good kind. And there are good versions of this where it's more about how we're processing things and how you can develop and things like that. But it also became popular, and so it was diluted heavily with kind of nonsense versions of these books as well. But Dave Chang, obviously, is very interested in applying these principles that he picked up throughout this book to the kitchen, to cooking, and to managing a kitchen. And so it was really interesting to hear him ask very specific questions about how that would work. And just to start out with the show, I thought it sounds great.
Of course.
The questions and the kind of the line of the conversation was extremely interesting, and we'll get more into that. But overall, I think it was about an hour and a half. It did not feel like it.
Yeah.
It was very, very interesting. And honestly, this is one where I wish Josh was here because this seems really up Josh's alley.
Yeah.
I think that he would have a lot to say about this book.
We miss you, Josh.
So we're going to have Josh call in and let us know if he likes this podcast.
Yeah. So the reason that this really resonates with me is because, I mean, I feel like this has a lot to do with me personally, where I'm at now and how I got here. And I'm not saying I'm like, oh, I'm on the top of this mountain and it's the most amazing thing ever. But to think of where I'm at now and where I started, it's pretty crazy how we got here.
Yeah.
I never would have guessed where I would have been I'm talking about like working and the industry that I'm in or whatnot. And also, I've known people that, it's funny because I used to work in a research place where we used to research ag stuff. And there was a lot of doctors there, like, PhDs. And it was so weird because anything outside of their expertise, they had no idea about. And it's not a knock on them, but it was like one of those things that I realized these guys are so much smarter than me. But yet, I feel like in a lot of ways, I'm a little bit more well-rounded.
Theirs is really narrow.
Very narrow.
But very, very intense.
Yes.
And I know several of the people you're talking about, and they are brilliant, and they're talking
Yeah.
about things I'm just like, what? But and this is definitely something that is heavy in this episode, and that's kind of his thesis, is that it's honestly a great thesis. Everyone should listen to this episode. It's a really, really interesting conversation. But he talks a lot about being highly specialized. It's almost detrimental in some cases because you don't learn how to learn. You don't learn how to adapt. You don't learn how to pivot and change things so that it works better for you. And so it's just really interesting. And they apply this to sports. They apply this to the military. They apply this to a lot of things. Because one of the things that he mentioned, and I wanted to talk to you about, and they mentioned a lot in this episode, is the Tillman organization. Are you familiar with Pat Tillman?
No, not at all.
Okay, so Pat Tillman was a football player. He played in college. He played in the professional leagues.
Okay, the name is familiar. I just didn't know where.
You probably know it once I get to where he played for the Cardinals. He was a linebacker, and then 9/11 happened. And Pat Tillman literally quit his NFL career and enlisted and went overseas. And he was killed by friendly fire. And so his family and I think maybe his wife set up the Tillman Foundation in his honor because he was very, and you'll have to read some of the quotes from Pat Tillman. This is another person that's really incredible to look up because he gave up a football career to go serve in a time of terror, and just fear.
Yeah.
And he gave up a football career. Not just I gave up some random job. He was a professional football player. And the Tillman Foundation, which is David talks multiple times, David Epstein. There's two Daves in this one.
So we will, from now on, David Epstein will be David,
And then
and Dave
Dave
Chang
Chang,
will be Dave.
So what this foundation does is if you are a veteran or even I think current military can do it as well, and you want to change careers, you want to change specialties, it's like grants specifically for that, so that you can pursue something that you see as a better choice for you. And it is just so right up David's alley that he's like, because they're highly specialized, they're and I mean, it's very specific and nuanced because it's the military. It's necessary and it's important, but these people get out, and a lot of times we've covered several shows where they have a lot of trouble adjusting to civilian
Integrating
life.
back into civilian
and
life,
finding,
yeah.
And finding their place really is what it comes down to. Finding that place where they feel like they're back in the civilian life. And it's just an incredible organization. And so we'll link that as well.
Yeah. So something that I kind of thought about while listening to this episode was about how there's kind of a trend, and I'm not gonna lie, a lot of the generations ahead of us have talked about how it's such a bad thing that millennials just jump from job to job to job or whatever.
Yeah, sure.
But there definitely is a trend to having a job for a little while and then going to a different one, not even in the same field. It's almost like they talked about, doing different things in different fields, almost,
Yeah.
to learn different, I guess.
Well, you think differently than the establishment, and that's not meant to be like, oh, anti-establishment. I'm saying like the people that are dedicated and have lived in that space for a long time, you start to homogenize on how you think. And sometimes the best way to shake that up is to get somebody who does not think like that. And so that's kind of counter to how people hire. And he even mentioned like he's worried about how LinkedIn hires, and he's worried about how people view resumes because he sees this guy thinks differently, and it's awesome. And he sees a resume that's changing around, and he sees that more as adapting. He sees it more as finding something that didn't fit for them, and then they try something else. And so it's really interesting. But yeah, I would say both of our stories, if you were to tell either of us 5 years ago where we are right now in the podcast, in our personal life, and then also where we're working, we would not see it coming.
No. I mean, you and me both work for a biotech company that's in the agricultural field. And I mean, like you said, I never would have, I never even wanted to go into agriculture. This isn't what I wanted to do. Very similar to Dave Chang, I went to school for religion. I was studying religion. And I literally wanted to be a pilot for missionaries. I wanted to fly them in and out of the mission field. So I went to school for that. Not life got in the way, but things changed. I ended up getting married, having a kid, and things changed. I didn't finish my degree in traveling the world and flying planes.
Sure.
So I pivoted, and my dad had a plant nursery just for ornamentals and stuff like that. I took over that right as the housing market crashed, and it was the worst time to be in the nursery business. And so we sat down and we said, okay, well, how are we going to make this work? And I said, I've never done it before, but people got to eat. And so I started farming. I started with like half an acre of squash, I remember. And long story short, I farmed for multiple years, got fairly middle-sized farm, was somewhat successful. And then one bad year just really just took me out. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do now. And literally right when I was at the bottom, I think I posted something on like Instagram, I believe, of like, man, I miss farming. I don't know what I'm going to do, blah, blah, blah. And a farm friend of mine contacted me and said, I'm looking for a farm manager. And I took over that management position over there, worked my butt off. I mean, I had 3 days off that year. For 8 months, I had 3 days off. I had Christmas Day.
Basically.
I had Christmas Day, New Year's Day, and Thanksgiving Day. Those were the 3 days that I had off. And I remember just being so burnt out. And did that. And then I got a different position at a nursery, a plant nursery, as a manager there. They completely downsized, so I lost my position there. And I'm like, I felt like such a failure. I really felt like a failure. And I went on Indeed, was looking for a job, found the research position at Florida Ag Research, worked there for almost 2 years, really enjoyed the job, but the pay I was working so many overtime hours just to make ends meet. And then I met Mr. Park, who is our CTO of this company, and the only reason that I got this job was from grinding and working hard. My resume never would have gotten me this job. And even I remember having the conversation with our CEO the first time, and he had never met me before, and there was a little bit of hesitance, like, I'm really trusting the guy that's met you, but I don't know, like, the resume doesn't, and I knew it, and I'm like, look, I'm gonna work hard, and I'm gonna make this work. And so they gave me a 3-month like window. Hey, if you can make it work, we'll keep you. And now I'm working for a biotech company, and I remember having conversations with the CEO and fearing, this was a while back, and I said, look, my biggest fear is that I'll rise to my incompetency and not be able to perform for you guys. But I feel like we just went through an expansion here that was killer.
It was something. We'll probably always remember that.
We will always remember it.
But we did achieve it.
And there was multiple times where I felt like I was just hitting this brick wall of like, I don't know what to do. But
oh yeah, no, there was weeks of that.
But we found a way to do it. So I felt proud of myself because I found where my limits were, but then we pushed past our limits. With a lot of your help, you talked me off the edge so many times because I was just like, I can't do this.
No, it was just, there was a lot of things at one time, and so it was an extreme month and a half.
It was crazy. But all of that ridiculous personal story to let you know that, like, I worked in the long run. I've worked in every aspect of agriculture now. Mm-hmm. I've done my own farm. I've managed like almost 1,000-acre farm. I worked for a citrus company that was growing plants and trees for the citrus industry. I worked on the research side, and now I'm working for a biotech company that's making a product for the ag industry. And it's because of all of those together that got me where I'm at now.
Yeah. No, and I mean, I'm a similar thing, and I'll keep it brief, but like I had a lot of transition when my mom passed away, and I decided I was going to do something else. And so I started working on writing. So I put together a portfolio because everybody wants to see your portfolio. And if you don't have one, I just went and wrote in a bunch of different styles. And I got a job at a startup. It was a tech startup, and I got it from Craigslist. They read my resume on Craigslist, and I met them, and they hired me. They hired me as a contracted writer to write articles. By the end of the 2 years I'd been there, I had built them an entire business plan, and I was the program director. And the CEO, inventor, all of that, he started making questionable decisions. And so I had that moment where it's kind of like, I believe in this and I've helped build all this, but it's not going to happen. And so I basically just was like, so, hey, Kirk, are you guys looking for anyone? You know, and it just kind of worked out that way. But now so I'm like kind of on the other side of it where I haven't worked in every aspect of agriculture, but I've kind of worked in a variety of different startups at a variety of different levels and just kind of made it work. And so it really is just, and this is something that we have worked together before. We were not at all concerned about working together again, and it just kind of worked out. But it's funny that it just works out sometimes.
Yeah.
And also one of the main things that they talked about in this episode that it kind of like stuck with me is he kept mentioning over and over again, like 30 is not like a bad time to start something.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like a lot of people get stuck in that mindset of, oh, regret, and I've missed my opportunity to do what I'm going to do. I don't think there's a time limit on that. I think that any time you can find something you're passionate about, something you can dig into, and something that it feels right to you, and you feel that kind of fulfillment from doing it, that's the right time. There is no expiration date on you finding
even
something
past
great.
30.
No, we talked about Charles Bradley on I think it was on a Todd's episode.
I believe so.
He was a singer that was literally a James Brown impersonator his entire life. When he was, I think it was either 55 or 65, got famous for 5 years and then passed away.
Yeah, I remember that one.
And that does not diminish at all what he was able to do because he's incredible. Like his music was incredible. And so I really love how David Epstein thinks. I love how he views things with a lens that's so different than kind of what we were brought up in. Because yeah, when I was working at that startup I was working with, for the first year, they paid me in stock. And first of all, I have millions of dollars in stock that is worth $0. But I had to pick up a part-time manual labor job. And so 3 days a week, I was working 10 hours a day, lifting boxes and doing things just so the other 3 days a week. So I was working 6 days a week total. And the other 3 days, I would work on this. You know, I would sit down and do conference calls and do things like that. But it's just, I don't know. You have to just sometimes try to find by taking that journey.
Yeah. And you've also got to rely on someone taking a little bit of a risk on you. Because like you said, I mean, the whole kind of system right now is built around people's resumes and their CVs and LinkedIn and all this other stuff. And it's great, but there's a lot of intangibles with every single person, a lot of things that can't just be broken down to a paragraph on a piece of paper.
Yeah, and I think people that are good at hiring know that.
Yeah.
I think that there is, when you've seen enough resumes and you've interviewed enough people, you can tell somebody who, even if they don't know exactly they can't walk in tomorrow and do the job. They would have to have an acclimation period. You can have a general sense of who would go make it happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I really appreciate that, you know, our job took a chance on us.
Yeah.
And I hope we're doing a good job. I think we're working hard. We're definitely working hard. I will say that. Well, that brings us to, I mean, what else? You got anything else on?
The only other thing that I really liked is they were talking about Nintendo, and then they got to Toyota. And I don't know if you know much about, but Toyota is the gold standard of a lot of different systems. They're gold standard of kind of efficiency and things like that. And he mentioned Kaizen, the word, and I'm sure that's mispronounced. I'm sorry, but it essentially means continual progress, trying for always
get
each
better.
day improve upon what you're doing. And that I really like as just a general premise in life. It's not something that I always do. Don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but it's something that I would like to strive to do. Always be better.
Yeah, always be getting a little bit better. Never just settle. Don't just get stagnant. Just keep trying to move forward in a forward motion. Yeah, and there's another one. I don't remember the word, but it had to do with introspection and like looking at where you may have failed or where you've succeeded, and identify those things so that you can continue to improve.
Yeah.
And they go hand in hand. And they talk about how most people don't spotlight that one as much because it's not as sexy, but it's very important as well.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of the things that.
No, and that really comes to mindfulness. It's all the same
Yeah.
thing. It's not, it doesn't have any flash to it, but there's a lot of value.
Yeah. So this was a great show. I highly
Seriously.
recommend this episode.
Check it out.
And also, I can't recommend the book yet because I haven't read it, but
I want to, though.
I want to read that book.
If that helps. After listening to this podcast, you will probably want to read the book. He's a really interesting guy.
I'll bring it on Todd's one day. I'll be like, you know what I discovered from our other show, the Podcast Discovery Show? A book.
Okay, yeah.
And I read that book.
and it was good.
All right. Well, this week's episode of the Podcast Discovery Show is brought to you by Code Story. So it's a podcast that focuses on the tech industry. And I'm not going to lie, I really wish that Josh was still here for this one. This is his wheelhouse.
This is Josh's episode that he missed right now. This is
the one he should have recommended.
This is the one he should have been on.
So it's a lot like How I Built This, but specifically about tech. I've listened to a few episodes. It's a very well produced show, and they've got some really good interviews. They're not just, someone that made an app in their backyard that never went anywhere. They're interviewing people that are, heavily in the tech industry. They interview Ryan, I can't pronounce his last name, of Credit Karma, Christopher Slowe of Reddit,
I'm guessing Graciano.
Yeah, that's pretty good, yeah. Ryan Graciano. Brandon Hillcart of Bark, and Cortland Allen of Indie Hackers. I'm so bad with names.
All of them were like more challenging names than you could just like easily read it off. There's no Jimmy Smith up there.
But it's an amazing show. I listened to 2 different episodes. I listened to the one with the guy from Reddit. I loved that episode. So good. And then I listened to another one that was more podcast centric. It was about a company that built a recording platform for podcasters. I don't remember the name of it, but it was very well produced. The show's very good. And we really want to thank them for sponsoring this episode of the Podcast Discovery Show. Also, speaking of promotion stuff.
Smoothly segued.
Yeah, it's a great segue.
Easily done.
See this shirt?
This is for the people who are watching the live stream, not for the podcast listeners.
This shirt is a very nice, beautiful shirt. It's Bella Canvas, made by our friend at Brands and Empires, Richie, who's been on the show before. And we have these shirts.
We got them.
For you.
Yep.
And all you have to do to try to win one of these shirts is to go over to Apple Podcasts or Podchaser, or where else can you be reviewed? I don't really know.
Spotify
you can on
doesn't have
Spotify.
one.
Anyway, I'll say those 2 things.
Yeah.
Apple Podcasts or Podchaser. We love Podchaser as well, so if you want to leave us a review there, you can. And at the end of your review, just put your shirt size. And we have like 25 of them, so you have a really good chance of winning a shirt.
your chance is really good. And we'll try and get in touch with you and figure out where to send your shirt. Because, the reason we ask for reviews is it helps with visibility. And then other people can find the show, because really we want to have a conversation with everybody who's listening at the end of every show. We want to know how you like the episode. Honestly, if you just want to let us know that, we have a group on Facebook called the Podcast Discovery Club. You can let us know there. You can reach out to us on Twitter and just let us know what you thought of this episode of the show or of any episode. We'd love to talk to you.
Yeah. Speaking of reviews, I'm going to read one real quick that we got recently.
Nice.
They did not put their shirt size, so they need to go leave go leave a new review and leave your shirt size so you can get a shirt. This is from My Stuttering Life. I really enjoyed the zebra stripe episode because you talked about mosquitoes. And being from Texas, our mosquitoes wear cowboy boots. I don't see how that's true.
I mean, it seems Texan.
I'm just kidding. Cowboy hats, and they are the size of apples. During the hot months, you dodge them by waving your hands in the air like you just don't care. 80s pun. And it's a huge nuisance. Okay, we're from Florida. We get it.
Yeah. We do understand.
The mosquitoes suck. Mosquitoes.
Yeah, was that a pun?
Mosquitoes are bad. Yeah, they suck. They suck so bad. I really like this podcast. I really like the interactions betwixt the hosts, and I'm going to keep on listening.
It's a great use of betwixt.
Great job. Thank you so much for your review. And if you want to go back and tweak your review with your shirt size, you would probably get a shirt.
Can you edit reviews? Yeah, put a shirt size on there.
All right. And also, by the way, we've been streaming these episodes on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, every week. I will admit our schedule is not solid because we always make sure that we're done with our work before we
do this.
Before we start doing this. So most of the times it's on Fridays. Sometimes it'll be on Saturdays. But usually Fridays, a little bit after 5 o'clock, maybe around 6, somewhere around there is when we'll normally be streaming these. You can find our YouTube channel on YouTube. We have our links.
See, that's Twitter. A great way to do it. Is subscribe to YouTube because they'll send you a message whenever we go live.
Yeah.
But in general, usually Friday, 4 to 5ish.
And a little sneaky thing that a lot of people don't know: if you watch the live stream, not only do you get to see all the stuff that gets cut out of the regular episodes on the podcast,
Kirk looking at me longingly.
What? You also
see, he doesn't deny it though.
You also get to hear the episodes days early before they release.
Yeah.
So you'll be an insider. Oh, and you can chat with us in the chat.
You can do that as well. And so if you follow our socials, you can see we'll let you know on this too. But sorry we aren't super hard scheduled, but we're trying to be close. But if you follow us on socials or subscribe on YouTube, you'll know when it happens.
So, not only did Code Story sponsor this episode, but I really liked the show. And so I want to talk about their show next week on an episode of the PDS. They did not pay us for that part. I will say that.
They did not pay for this review. We don't do that.
No, we do not. So please don't message us for a payment of
we don't do
your show. We really don't.
Promise.
But the episode that I listened to that I really enjoyed and I thought was really fascinating, because we use Reddit a lot for our discoveries and things like that. There's just so many different communities in there that you can learn a lot of things. I mean, it's the internet, so take it with a grain of salt.
Oh yeah, I mean, no, you can. It's the internet in one website. It's a lot of things.
But I mean, Reddit is its own special snowflake of a website.
It definitely is.
And so they talk to Chris Slowe from Reddit. This is episode 19 of Code Story with Chris Slowe of Reddit. I want to recommend that one for next week. I'm going to reach out to Josh and I'm going to see if he'll come on next week's episode, because this is his bread and butter. Why?
Quarantine. He's coming back from Iceland. He's on a 2-week quarantine.
Let's go to his house we'll do it through the window.
Then we have to go to quarantine, right? Isn't that how that works?
No, we'll do it. We'll do it in his front yard and he'll be inside. We'll just feed the mic through the window crack.
Yeah, we could do that. Yeah, it's be like, just don't touch the wire, but just stick it out the window.
That's what she said.
Did she? What does that mean?
All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening. And remember,
there's always more to discover. Thank you for listening to the Podcast Discovery Show. We have a few things we'd like to tell you. First, we would love to hear from you on Twitter at the PDS Official or in our Facebook group, the Podcast Discovery Club.
Secondly, leaving a rating or review on iTunes helps tremendously in giving us visibility and also visibility to the podcast that we recommend. You can also check out our Patreon page to get exclusive bloopers, old episode archives, and other exclusive content while supporting the show.
Finally, seriously, get in touch. We'd love to hear from you about what you love about podcasts. And thank you for being a part of all of the things that we do.
This was a podcast from the Podfix Network.